Hello, and welcome back to the Loco Files. In today's episode, we'll be looking at the Great Western Railway Grange class. The Great Western Railway 6800 class, or Granges, were a mixed traffic 460 steam locomotive class built to replace the Great Western 4300 class moguls. There were 80 in the class in total, and all built at Swindon Works, using some reconditioned components from withdrawn 4300s. All members of the class have been withdrawn and scrapped, but there is a new build project at Tyseley, bringing the next member of the class, 6880 Betton Grange, to life, so that this lost Great Western 460 can be enjoyed by a brand new generation. The Great Western Railway locomotive standardisation policy, pursued by George Jackson Churchward, envisaged a range of locomotives which would be suitable for the majority of duties, and yet would share a small number of standard components. Amongst the designs suggested in 1901 was a 460 with 5-foot 8-inch driving wheels and a standard No. 1 boiler. Although planned in 1901, none were built during Churchward's lifetime. Charles Collett, his successor, preferred to introduce the Hall class with 6-foot diameter driving wheels. The 4300 class of 260 tender locomotives had been introduced by the Great Western for mixed traffic duties in 1911, and by 1932 there were 342 in service. However, by the mid-1930s, some of the earlier members of the class were in need of attention, and the class as a whole was struggling with some of the duties expected of them. Collett therefore revived the Churchward proposal, but modified the design to include a cab and controls to the current style. Between 1936 and 1939, 100 4300 class members were withdrawn and replaced with new 460 locomotives. 80 belonged to the Grange class, whilst the final 20 belonged to the Manors. It was intended to replace all the 4300s in this way, but the Second World War prevented this from happening. The Granges were effectively a smaller wheeled version of the Hall class. The wheels, valve motion and tenders were taken from withdrawn engines, reconditioned and then used in the construction of 100 new locomotives, with the components from one old locomotive being spread amongst more than one new locomotive. The cylinders of the Granges were the same size as those used on the 4300s, but the old cylinders could not be reused, because the cylinders and valves shared a common casting, and the new design called for the separation between cylinder and valve centre lines to be increased by 2.5 inches. This was done in order to make the cylinders level with the axles, but still allowed the use of the old valve motion parts. The locomotives were built in 2 batches to a single order, lot number 308. Numbers 6800 to 6859 were built between August 1936 and December 1937, and numbers 6860 to 6879 appeared between February and May 1939. They were all named after granges in the area covered by the Great Western Railway. Further construction of the class was cancelled due to the outbreak of the Second World War. They were originally fitted with Churchwood 3,500-gallon tenders, taken from withdrawn members of the 4300 class. However, after the Second World War, several were fitted with newer 3,500 and 4,000-gallon tenders. Despite being built to a 35-year-old design, in service they proved to be reliable performers. With the power and mixed traffic characteristics, they could handle most duties on the network. Their smaller driving wheels gave them a higher tractive effort than the hauled class. They were often used for the haulage of perishable goods such as fruit and broccoli, and for excursion trains. However, their axle loading prevented their use on some cross-country routes previously operated by the 4300s. As a result, a lighter version in the form of the Manor class was introduced for these duties. We'll now look into the accident involving a member of the class. On the 21st of September 1962, the prototype of the class, 6800 Arlington Grange, was hauling a freight train which overran signals at Steventon and was derailed. Now, this is the only one I have found whilst researching, but no doubt there will be others, and feel free to chuck those in the comments down below. The entire class was withdrawn from service between 1960 and 1965, and no examples were preserved. 6853 Morehampton Grange was a candidate for preservation, however, by the Great Western Society at Didcot. However, Manor Class 7808 Cookham Manor was purchased instead, condemning the Granges to the history books. Thankfully, this mistake has been reversed, with GWR 6880 Betting Grange, the next Grange that was due to be built originally, currently being built at Tyseley Locomotive Works after moving from the Llangollen Railway. Whilst there isn't a completion date for the project yet, the Society have said that the locomotive is nearing its completion. The livery is yet to be announced as far as I can tell on the Society's website, and one more thing to look at. Well, technically two. Two Granges have been preserved fictionally in the 77C universe, with 6803 Buckleberry Grange and 6818 Hardwick Grange, which you can see in Rails to Refuge and Tales of New Wessex, respectively. I'd like to thank you all for watching and listening. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, feel free to throw a like, comment in the comment section down below. If you really enjoyed it, subscribe and see what comes next on this show. And yes, thank you, and goodbye.